Today's topic is workforce development. I'm joined here today by Sara Gligora, who's from the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture, where she is a special assistant for workforce development, and Dan Eichenlaub, who's president of Eichenlaub Inc. and a Team PA Agriculture Advisory Board member, and Dr. Jonathan Campbell, who's associate professor and instructor for the Penn State Extension Butcher School. To get us started, I'm happy to introduce Sara Gligora. Sara is a special assistant for workforce development and central regional director at the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture. Before coming to Pennsylvania Department of Ag, she worked in the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry in the Apprenticeship and Training Office in the state's Workforce Development Board. She has helped to develop and support numerous apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeship programs and helped to increase awareness of the programs throughout the state. She has also worked in the local workforce development system. She has a master's degree in social services and a focus on policy and community organizing from Bryn Mawr College. So take it away, Sara. And Sarah's moving screen share. There we go. Look, it looks good.
Yeah, there we are. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this call. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my PowerPoint there. Okay. Yeah, so thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be with you all and to discuss some of PDA's workforce development initiatives and some trends that we have been seeing. For many years now, PDA has been specifically focused on workforce development and the growing labor shortages, and we have been working hard to identify ways to address these issues. PDA has been focused on addressing issues at all levels, from youth all the way up to adult and dislocated workers and workers looking for a career change. There is a need to develop the next generation of ag workers, but also a need to provide continued opportunities and pathways for those in the industry, including opportunities to build their skills and learning about changing technologies. To get a better understanding of Pennsylvania's ag industry and its economic impact, PDA, with support from the Team PA Foundation, commissioned an economic impact study in early 2018. The report, developed by eConsult Solutions and Temple University's Fox School of Business, provided a baseline analysis of Pennsylvania's ag industry. The report contained a set of strategic recommendations to keep Pennsylvania ag competitive, one of them being a focus on broadening workforce development and education opportunities. Due to COVID and changes in the economy, the department and Team PA Foundation worked to update the report. The updated report was completed and released in early May. An especially important part of this report was the review of future impacts, which includes an assessment of the impact of COVID-19 on Pennsylvania agriculture and priorities for recovery. As you can see, the report shows that Pennsylvania's ag industry has a $132.5 billion annual economic impact and supports more than 590,000 jobs, paying nearly $33 billion in wages annually. And agriculture supports about 1 out of every 10 jobs in Pennsylvania. One of the biggest takeaways from the report is the need to focus on workforce development and labor shortages. In every roundtable discussion, it was agreed that the biggest long-term threat to Pennsylvania agriculture is the inability to attract and retain high-quality workers. Workforce development must be a priority. A sustainable workforce requires addressing the needs for advanced technological skills, wage competition from other competitive industries, and anti-immigration sentiments. Expanding training programs such as apprenticeship, access to immigrant labor, and expanding awareness of career opportunities in agriculture are keys to providing a high quality and plentiful workforce. As you will see, the results and findings from these reports have helped guide PDA's workforce development initiatives and strategies. PDA's workforce development initiatives have focused on 3 different components. These include increasing awareness of agricultural career opportunities, expanding on-the-job training programs such as apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship, and increasing interagency collaboration and involvement in the workforce development system. One need identified by the Economic Impact Study and by a number of our stakeholders has been the need to increase awareness of the various career opportunities within ag. We have heard from many groups and employers about the common misconception of what a career in agriculture looks like or entails. There is a need to reach youth and their families to educate them on all the possibilities that exist within ag. To help address this issue, the Commission for Agricultural Education Excellence put together an agricultural career awareness campaign targeted to parents and teachers and students in pre-K through 8th grade. A second phase of the campaign is underway currently and has been expanded to include additional geographical areas. In addition to the campaign, the department also provides regular events and opportunities, including those held during our annual farm show, where students get the opportunity to engage with agricultural employers and experience ag firsthand. To provide more opportunities for hands-on training and education in ag-related fields, the department has also been focusing on growing and expanding training programs such as apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship. These programs serve as a successful tool to help develop a skilled workforce and help to fill the expected workforce shortages and teach the actual skills needed by ag employers. As you can see, there are currently 7 ag-related registered apprenticeship programs in the state, one of them being Penn State's Butcher program, which we will hear a little bit more about today. And then there are 2 registered agricultural pre-apprenticeship programs. In addition to these current programs, we've been working with a number of other groups and training providers to identify other opportunities for apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships within agriculture. Next month, the department will be partnering with the Apprenticeship and Training Office to offer an Apprenticeship 101 training for potential agricultural apprenticeship sponsors. This training will provide more information on what sponsoring a program entails and will discuss the benefits of creating a program. Expanding apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship helps create opportunities for those interested in the industry and helps create a skilled workforce to address these workforce shortages we're hearing of. Another main focus of the department has been on increasing interagency collaboration and work with the workforce development system. The department has collaborated with a number of other state agencies, such as the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, and more. PDA has been appointed to the state's Workforce Development Board and participates in quarterly meetings of the board, as well as a number of the board's committees. The department has also been involved with the Keystone Economic and Workforce Development Command Center, which serves as an innovative approach to addressing the critical issue of training qualified workers. These collaborations with other state agencies and stakeholders have helped PDA secure a spot at the table. We have been able to elevate agricultural workforce issues that may have otherwise gone unaddressed and have highlighted the importance and critical need of a skilled ag workforce. As part of the interagency collaboration, PDA has been working very closely with the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. Earlier this year, our 2 agencies identified a need to focus on workforce development, specifically within agriculture. While there are many workforce development programs and opportunities, many of our agricultural employers and organizations are disconnected from the workforce system and unaware of them. The 2 departments have come together to create a new workforce opportunity specifically for the industry to help create programming that meets the unique needs of ag. To ensure we are addressing the actual issues, we collaborated to host 3 stakeholder listening sessions and created a stakeholder survey. The listening sessions included agricultural organizations from across the state, including ag employers and ag groups, and many of you may have joined as well. Discussion focused on stakeholders' experience with the workforce development system and the pain points they experienced. The stakeholder survey was sent to an even larger group of our stakeholders and had over 130 respondents covering every county in Pennsylvania. PDA and LNI have formed an internal working group to analyze the data from these surveys and listening sessions. The final report is still in progress and should be available in the next few weeks. In the meantime, LNI has created a 1-page overview of some of the results. The graph you see here was taken from the 1-pager and highlights the demand and need for apprenticeship opportunities. Survey participants were asked if training was needed to develop their workforce, and about 92% of respondents answered yes. Respondents were also asked what type of training would meet their needs, and about 75% of respondents believed that apprenticeship would be the best training opportunity. Over half of respondents reported that the training they needed or wanted was not available in their local area. These initial findings have also highlighted the disconnect between the ag and the workforce system and a need to increase awareness of available programs and opportunities. Many participants reported having very little involvement with their local workforce development system or PA Career Link and were not aware of all the possible programs that were available to them. And this overall one-page summary we will start sharing today and can share with you all if you're interested. So while our work is still ongoing and we are still working to analyze this data and determining the next best steps, some initial projects have already come about from this work, including the Apprenticeship 101 training opportunity I mentioned earlier. These initial projects are aimed at addressing the preliminary results of the surveys and calls and have really focused on addressing the gaps between the workforce system and ag that has been identified. PDA has begun working with the local workforce development boards and staff of the PA Career Links from across the state to share information on agriculture and our unique workforce needs. In addition, PDA has been asked to join LNI's monthly partner calls, which includes all of the workforce development boards and Pennsylvania Career Link administrators from across the state. This is a really great opportunity for us to share about new programs, such as new training opportunities, or to discuss particular workforce needs, such as occupations or companies with hiring needs. This is just the first step in connecting ag and the workforce system, and I expect to see much more come from this work with LNI. So as we can see from these preliminary results and the results of the economic impact study, a skilled, stable workforce is critical to the success of ag in the state. PDA will continue to focus on these initiatives, but we'd love to hear from you about your workforce or ag education experiences or issues or even opportunities that arise. We are here to support you and help connect you with the workforce system and vice versa. So please feel free to reach out to me at the contact information below. Now I'll turn it back over to Dean Roush.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I think it was terrific and really laid out a course of action that's being undertaken by the department and giving people access to a lot of resources. So I hope people do follow up and contact you directly. So next, I'd like to introduce Dan Eichenlaub, who's the president of Eichenlab, Inc. Dan is a Penn State graduate and a serial entrepreneur, having co-founded several businesses in landscaping and composting industries. His primary business is as president and co-founder of Eichenlaub, Inc., which is a full-service design, build, landscape construction, and maintenance firm that has provided award-winning service to residences and business in Western Pennsylvania for almost 50 years. Dan is very involved with our college, including as co-chair of the Volunteer Development Council for our current fundraising campaign, and regularly engages with our students and strategic initiatives, including entrepreneurship and innovation, for which we are very grateful. In fact, I've taken a couple of busloads of students to go visit his business to see how someone builds a business from the ground up. So we're really grateful for all of that. In addition, Dan is currently on the Team PA Ag Advisory Board and is a citizen advocate at both the federal and state level for agricultural research in the college. Eichenlaub, Inc. was the first company to offer the National Landscape Management Apprenticeship Program in Pennsylvania. They've trained and certified the first female apprentice in the country and in Pennsylvania. A second apprentice is now attending the college's landscape contracting program. With that, it's a great pleasure to introduce Dan Eichenlaub. Dan.
Rick, thank you for that great introduction. I'm going to work to share my screen here. And I'm pleased to have the opportunity to talk with this group today. My first slide really talks about collaborations, and really Sara is at the crux of really all of this. You'll see PDA is on my slide here, but this challenge of workforce development is too big for any one organization or even one association to take on. And it's people like Sara and the department's work to try to bring us all together and make these connections with labor and industry and the workforce investment boards and stuff like that, that are going to be what we need to do to help solve this problem. So we heard about Team PA here. For those of you that don't know, Team PA is a collaboration at the highest levels of a private-public partnership, really, with the goal to help Pennsylvania be a national leader in education and economic development. So I'm pleased to be on that board. We have a subgroup that works on workforce development, and I'm involved with that because I feel that it is so important to whether Pennsylvania is going to be the winner at the end of the day in our economic development if we can develop our team members. So you'll see here, I have my national and my state association. So the National Association of Landscape Professionals and PLNA, Pennsylvania Landscape Nurses, they were really critical in developing the apprenticeship program I'm going to talk about for just a few minutes. And of course, the government agencies are really important because they create the rules around apprenticeship. They're kind of the gatekeepers. They do a great job at helping to make sure we're providing value in these apprenticeship programs and that the credentials that people earn are valuable and not just a badge that they get for doing very little. So, so again, an important part. So workforce development training, why is this really important? And all of us on this call know the answer, but at Eichenlab here, it's all about business growth. If you don't have people, you can't do it. If we train our people, we get better production out of them. We get better quality workmanship, or less rejects, whether you're manufacturing a product or in our case, we're manufacturing a landscape. Safety, really important for those of us or those that are tied into paying workers' comp premiums. You know, anything you can do to keep your experience rating low is really important. And the last piece is really, really important right now is retention. People are going to tend to stay with a company that is investing in them and they feel that they have a career. So this is the reason, part of the reason why workforce development is so important to individual companies. At Eichenlaub, we do offer the landscape management apprenticeship that you saw. Sara had a list of different apprenticeships in ag. We're one of those. I want to talk for a few minutes about how do these apprenticeships come about. And so the Department of Labor is the one who ultimately certifies or approves an apprenticeship to exist. And then they may delegate some of that authority to the state agencies. In our case, that's labor and industry and so forth. So that's the first group, the government piece. Then there's the sponsor. The sponsor is the people who usually create the apprenticeship. So that's the class that Sara said that 101 class they're going to have on apprenticeships. It's probably the sponsors that need to be involved with that. And a sponsor can be a company, but more likely it tends to be unions or industry associations or a much bigger group than an individual company, because they want to, the labor departments want to make sure this is widely available all over the country. So in our case, our sponsorship was the National Association of Landscape Professionals, and our state association did it for the state of Pennsylvania. And their primary job is to keep track of those involved in the apprenticeship. So both the business partners that I'm going to talk about in a minute, as well as the apprentice. The business partner is the Eichenlaubs of the world. They're the ones that are actually offering the apprenticeship, putting a mentor together with those apprentices, keeping track of their training activity so that they can send that up to the sponsor to say the person's completed all the necessary steps in order to get that apprenticeship, and also to give them support in the related training that they need to do in addition to the on-the-job training that they're accomplishing. So that's the business partner's role. And then there's the apprentice themselves. And apprentices need to meet certain eligibility requirements that the government may put on the apprenticeship, and or the company may add additional ones that are necessary for the apprentices that they want to attract or whatever. So again, there's some eligibility requirements. To be an apprentice, they must complete all of the program requirements along the way. They may have an apprenticeship agreement with the business partner that says, here's the basis that we're going to offer you this apprenticeship and how this is going to work. And then the apprentice gets to enjoy the benefits of the apprenticeship, which is really learning a lifelong skill, or the beginning of a lifelong skill that they'll use in their career to move them forward. So what's exciting at Eichenlaub is that we were the first to sign on to this apprenticeship about 3 years ago here in Pennsylvania. And we were very fortunate. We had 2 wonderful apprentices who applied and got the opportunity. And as a result, here you see my apprentices. Here's Megan, who was the first woman in the whole country to complete that apprenticeship. There were other apprentices before her, but she's the first woman in the country. And then Zach over here, he's the one that so enjoyed the apprenticeship that he decided to go on to Penn State in the 4-year landscape contracting major. So here's somebody who started their gateway to the industry was really through this apprenticeship, but ultimately they realized that there was much more to this, and they have the academic ability to get into Penn State and get in this program. So, so that's what's really exciting. And of course, having apprentices are really good because they help to attract the next round of apprentices. I mean, we use them as part of our marketing tool as to how we'll attract apprentices for our next class, which we're currently trying to see. The last piece I'd like to talk about a little bit is, since we're all involved with Penn State here, is some of the engagement that we've had with Penn State Extension around workforce development. And we're probably all aware of many certifications out there. I think in the ag industry, probably the one that touches many of us might be pesticide license, where you get a certification that's required by the state to apply pesticides, and you need to continue to have continuing education training in order to keep that license up. In our industry, we have another one that's sponsored by our industry called the Pennsylvania Certified Horticulturalist. And really, this is a knowledge-based exam around your plant knowledge and things like that. Again, it has requirements for ongoing education to keep that credential up. And these are the things that Penn State Extension is offering. Additionally, there are some pre-credentialing programs out there specific to the landscape industry. And I bring these up because these might be the starting points as you begin to think about your apprenticeship programs. So in Pennsylvania, with the help of the state, our state association actually created a curriculum that could be used by secondary education, primarily VOTEX, to offer horticultural or actual landscape training. So we created the program, the teaching program. And the nice thing is, if the teachers follow that program, their students may well be able to take an exam at the end and get this pre-credentialing program, which would make them a Pennsylvania Certified Horticulturalist Associate. So they don't have the Pennsylvania Certified Horticulturalist badge because they need a lot more to do that, but they learn all the basics that are necessary to go on and get that higher certification at some point. This has been a great place for Eichenlaub. We reach out to all the students who pass that exam through all the high schools in Pennsylvania that offer this program, and we offer them the opportunity to apply to our apprenticeship program. So this is how we get, this is like a feeder that we use in order to try to find people that might want to continue their career in this area. And the last piece that I think is really important, and I should say there's pre-credentialing programs, they have now reached out to Penn State to use some other training that the industry's worked with Penn State on to develop, to be able to offer those in their classroom as well. So lots of people using Penn State training programs. And the last piece that the Pennsylvania Landscape and Nursery Association joined with Extension through a $150 grant that we gave to them was to support and develop training specific to our industry. And what this allows to happen is, one, we had input on the training. We helped Penn State develop the priorities of that training, like what module should be developed first, and then on and on and on. And also worked with this, the Penn State, I'll say their computer system, so to speak, where companies can go in and buy the training for their team members and follow along their progress online to see who's completed it. Did they answer the questions correctly? Did they actually complete the course and do it? And so this is the place where I think many of your other organizations, through your associations, can begin to work with Penn State Extension to get in queue to help look at can they help you develop training necessary for your industry. Today, many young people, they say, will change jobs quite often compared to an old dog like me. So, so part of this training is necessary because the goal is to see, can we get these new hires up to a return on investment where we're making money instead of only investing in them, and begin to get a return. And that's where these online training programs become really critical, because that person can go do that training, get the background, and then join with our trainer and actually go out in the field and do some of the work and really hone that skill, so that within weeks they're being productive versus months or years that may have occurred in the past. So again, this Penn State engagement has been, with Extension, has been really important for our industry, and I think is a tremendous avenue that is the beginning point of training. And again, this training may end up in a certification program. It could end up in an apprenticeship, but in our company, it just ends up in getting the people to know what they're doing, so we can benefit from their contributions. So I think with that, Dean, thank you for the opportunity to let me speak. And of course, we'll be on to take questions here at the end.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to there's questions, Dan, that I really need your help with. So thank you very much, Dan. And now it's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Jonathan Campbell, who's an associate professor, but he's also a developer and instructor for the Penn State Extension Butcher School, which will be a primary thing he'll talk about today. Jonathan began his career in the meat industry in 1998 while an undergraduate student at Clemson University in the meat laboratory. He went on to serve as the manager until 2006, when he took an extension associate and research position at Iowa State. In 2013, Dr. Campbell joined the animal science faculty here at Penn State. He hosts numerous workshops and short courses each year. In addition, he is closely tied to meat and food processors in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeastern United States, and works on validating the safety of various processed meat items. Over to you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate the time this afternoon. Basically, what I was asked to cover was an overview of the apprenticeship that was created by 3 different extension teams. And I think it's just a great testament of how we kind of tore down some silos, and folks like Rick Kroll, Dan Brockett, Harry Chrissy, Dana Olendike, Martin Bucknavage, and myself kind of put our heads together to create a team of how we kind of fill some of the need in workforce development in extension related to meat processing. Part of this, obviously, for me was very selfish. I get asked all the time, how do I start a meat processing business? What are the regulations surrounding starting a meat processing business? And then as I visit all over the United States, where do I find help? Where do I find trained help and folks that really want to stay in this part of our ag sector? And not having an answer to the last one kind of bothered me a little bit. And I know how long it's taken me to learn only a brief portion of what I know compared to maybe what somebody's been in the industry for 30 or 40 years knows. And so we sought about, with our various extension teams, working together to answer some of those questions. And what we did was take the extension short course model, something that you and maybe learn in, say, 2 days, 3 days, or even a week, and kind of flip that onto its head. That's the type of programming that I was used to using. Granted, our target audience was very different. we were trying to train folks that were not hobbyists, but or perhaps were already in the industry, already in the business, and wanted to further their education about something very specific. Great example of that is the Italian processed meats workshop we developed when I got here, or my food safety colleagues, the FSMA workshops that were created as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act. And so instead of targeting very specific small topics, we chose to take the short course model and as I said, flip it on its head, create the training portion, the education portion that Dan talked about, that is usually driven in other areas. I'll take electricians or plumbers or welding. That is something that is fairly well defined in a lot of vocations. But meat processing, for many reasons, none of which I'm qualified to critique really, but for many reasons, some of that has either been absorbed into items like a culinary program, or perhaps because of lack of infrastructure, funding, what have you, the facilities to be able to teach the hands-on portion of meat cutting, butchering, and further meat processing just doesn't exist in the United States much anymore. Most of that has been relied upon as we consolidate industry in the United States. Most of that has gone by the wayside, and people are simply just trained on the job solely without any experience coming into a position that may be open. So what we did, we created a program prior to starting down the road of the apprenticeship. And I have to give credit to Dr. Brent Hales for challenging us of calling our program an apprenticeship without the official title from the Department of Labor and Industries of having a butcher apprenticeship in Pennsylvania, which is kind of what made us change our terminology from the Penn State Extension Butcher School, which is technically what it's called, to a butcher apprenticeship. And the structure of that, just in a quick overview, and then I have a brief video that I'd like to share with you of not my words, but the apprentices' words and what this program has meant to them. So we created a weird model because the university was the sponsor that Dan talked about. We were responsible for thinking about what the curriculum was, how we keep track of who those apprentices are, who the business partners are, having a working relationship with the numerous meat processors all over the United States. We felt that we were poised to be able to do that. And so we thought, why not? Penn State should be the sponsor for this program. And so we developed a curriculum in which that students, and I'll use that word loosely, but individuals that were in the apprenticeship program that were chosen were actually paid employees, albeit part-time, but paid employees to also be paid while they were going to school, because they were getting hands-on work experience at our meat processing facility, our USDA meat processing facility right here on campus. So for 4 months, these individuals worked for 20 hours a week in our processing facility on campus, and then went to, quote, school from various individuals throughout the extension network, as well as even outside of the extension network, were asked to be instructors for the 4 months that these individuals were here working in our processing facility. So that what we created as a sponsorship was at least 150 hours of, quote, education, and then 2 years and 3,000 hours of work, hands-on work experience working with one of our business partners in that apprenticeship program. That's what was approved. I know some of my colleagues like Dana Olendike and Dan Brockett were instrumental in getting that approved. And we had tremendous help from folks like Sara and PDA and I'm sure some other people that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, but that's really the program in a nutshell. And the thought process was that not only would they be able to work in our facility that is not focused on production, but it's more focused on education. And that's what's nice about starting an individual at maybe a little bit slower pace before they actually get into a day-to-day work experience as part of their 2 years, 3,000 hours requirement for the apprenticeship program that was approved. And I can sit here and talk to you all day long about what the structure of it was. That's the basic of the structure. But what's probably more important is what was approved. But what's more important is what the individuals, what it meant to them. And I'm just going to share a quick video with you.
So I'm Morgan Livingston. I'm 27, about to turn 28, and I'm from Indiana County, Pennsylvania, where my family has a farm up there.
Parker Bell. I'm 23. I'm originally from a small town in Maryland, but I live in Tyrone, Pennsylvania now.
I'm Mitchell Herzog. I am 19 years old and I'm from Wayne County, Pennsylvania.
I'm Susie Birchfield and I'm from Port Royal, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so I'm Cash Sprankle. I'm from Tyrone, Pennsylvania, and I'm 20 years old.
My name is Nick Oban. I'm 21 years old and I'm from Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. I decided to join because it was a right opportunity at the right time situation. I've always had a little interest in butchering and culinary stuff, so this just kind of took that to the next level, and yeah, that's it.
It's definitely given me a greater appreciation for what the USDA inspected processors that we are working with have to go through to meet all the requirements and provide good service to us. It helps me see everything that they're dealing with on their side beyond just what I see as a farmer and a livestock producer. So that's been a big help in the way that I can interact with processors as I'm working with them. And then just, I've learned so much about meat cutting, about how to meet all of the regulatory and food safety standards, things that I just wasn't fully aware of the whole process from slaughter to retail and how that impacts meat quality at the end. So I'm really looking forward to getting more hands-on experience in my internship site in the kind of the real world or the actual day-to-day industry, but really got a good foundation from the program and how all that stuff looks.
If I like where I'm externing at, I'd probably try and work there for a couple of years. But I'd slowly as we speak, trying to get plans together to build my own shop.
Just that it was a real privilege to work with all my classmates, all the staff here at the Meats Lab and Penn State. It was a great group of folks, and I think we learned a lot from each other and from all the Meats Lab staff, so it was a great experience.
So far, I think this experience is great and the program's great. I mean, I've learned all I know so far from this program, so I think it's a great opportunity for people who want to get started in it and don't know where to start. This is a great place to do that, and then it gives you the opportunity to make connections in the meat industry because of all the connections they have here, and then go from there. So
Follow your dreams, I guess. And I'm very grateful. I know my family is very grateful for this that you guys brought to us, and I'm super excited to get. I was just on the phone with my new employers. We're all super excited to get into it, and then, I mean, thank you.
It's a great program so far, and I think it's just going to get better year after year.
I would say that if you're going to go into this program, to just know that this is not something you're going to get in 6 months or 10 months. This is, this is something that you're gonna need to commit to and really commit to being a lifelong learner, because I think there's so much to learn regarding meat and our food that it could take a lifetime to get there.
Thanks, Jonathan. There's a few questions for you in the chat, or sorry, in the Q&A rather. Thanks a lot. That was terrific. Now it's time for us to open things up with our Q&A. We received a number of great questions via the registration submission, and we'll focus on those first. And if we have time, we'll get back to some of the other questions that are in the Q&A and so forth. But as they have time, I'm sure the speakers will take a look and try to answer the ones they can answer. So the first question is directed to Sara. Please discuss the status of the agricultural sector within labor and industry. Does it need to be a higher priority occupation under L&I? Or what does it take to establish, prove the need, and make it a priority?
Yeah, so I think this question is a good one, and one that we have been getting a lot lately. I think it is important to highlight that L&I would say, does consider agriculture a critical industry. Especially with COVID, we've seen just how important ag is, especially to the state, and keeping people fed. So I do think L&I realizes that, and the work that we've been doing with them does highlight the importance that they also put into the industry. They are willing, and they have brought up to us about this possible funding opportunity just for ag. So they really do see the need and the critical nature of the industry. I do think this question probably hits a little bit on the concept of the high priority occupation list, which is a list that L&I uses to determine how workforce funding will be used. So the list relies on a formula that looks at the occupation as a whole and the typical wages that the occupation offers. And it also includes demand for the occupation and some other economic factors. The main purpose of this list is to help determine what training programs can be funded with workforce dollars. So if there's not a training program for a specific occupation, it really is not necessary to push to have the occupation added to the list. The HPO, High Priority Occupation List, as we're calling it, is a regional list. So each workforce development board can request to add occupations to their list. So as a training is developed for a specific program, we can work with that local board to get that occupation added to the list. There are other ways for getting workforce funding for training programs. That includes registering your program as an apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program. So once there's an apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship program, you no longer have to work with that board to get the occupation put on the high priority occupation list. So, in the past, there was a push to have multiple agricultural occupations added to this statewide high priority occupation list. A more targeted approach, I think, would be successful. So if there is an occupation you have in mind that you think needs to be added to the HBO, you can work with us and we can connect you to the local workforce development board to begin focusing on that. I think the key takeaway from all of this is that just because an occupation may not be on the HPO, it does not mean it is not an in-demand or critical occupation. It just means that it didn't meet that formula that L&I has. And there are ways that we can work to get that on the HPO list if it is needed, or other workarounds to address that.
Thanks very much, Sara. So the next question I'm going to try to handle. What do you see as the college's and Penn State Extension's role in workforce development? How does the work in the college is planning around workforce development and credentials align with the One Penn State University, One Penn State 2025 workaround and micro credentials? So my first answer to that is in terms of what is our role, leadership. And when we were prepping for this, Dan Eichenlab pointed out that the college organized a forum to look at water quality, Pennsylvania Imbalances called, and it's still running 5 years later and had lots of outcomes. So one of the things Dan proposed and I'm going to do right now is that we poll you. So if the college were to try to put together an ag workforce summit with partners focused on developing solutions through work groups, would you be willing to participate and or encourage members of your business and industry to participate? So this is one way for us to get a bit of a poll, get a feel for whether there's a strong interest out there in developing a much more detailed forum than this to look at workforce development. So I'm going to launch this poll, and we'll be able, as I talk, people can fill it in. So one of the questions about, how is the college planning to work on this is that we're really in the business of educating in training the next generation of professionals and researchers and providing lifelong learning opportunities through their careers. So that's part of our land grant mission. The One Penn State 2025 is a program really driven by the Central University and fully supported by President Barron. And it means that every part of Penn State across the Commonwealth will offer by 2025 a seamless 24/7, 365 online experience and function as a truly diverse and inclusive institution. One Penn State 2025 will create this fluid, personalized, collaborative environment. And it's really inspired to a great extent by the success that Penn State has had with the program in World Campus, where we're a national leader in online training. So as I said, we're a leader in that. And the idea is to continue to expand that thinking across all of our offerings, not just on the academic side, but also on the workforce side more generally, and not necessarily college graduates. So I think the poll has pretty much run its course, maybe not. But it looks like, Dan, there's very strong support. 57% or 31 people or a group said they would be very likely to participate. Another 29% or 16 people, somewhat likely. So combined, that's something like it's trending toward about half, about 3/4 of the people that are participating today would support that. So that sounds pretty positive, Dan. So that leads me to the next question, which I'm handing off to Dan. How would we encourage more individuals to pursue careers in the green industry, especially landscaping?
Well, I think that this is a really tough one. I think that one is we need to get into the high schools more. What's nice with our apprenticeship program, since we often try to recruit students right out of high school, we've gone to many of the VOTech schools in the high schools in our region. And these teachers are always looking for somebody to come in and talk about what they do and maybe even do a field trip. So that's one of the ways. There's also the extracurricular activities that schools offer. So these would be like FFA or other clubs that a school may have. And again, can we begin to talk to students about our industries? One of the things the apprenticeship has afforded us to do is if a student would say to their parent, when I graduate from high school, I'm going to go do landscaping at Eichenlaub, there was a good chance that the parent would say, go find a better job. What we found is by offering the apprenticeship program, if a student would say to their parent, hey, I'm going to go to Eichenlaub in this apprenticeship in landscaping and start my career, the parent would say, yeah, go for it. Because maybe in many cases, the parent itself was an apprentice in a program or whatever. So it has allowed us to get better access to better students or to students, period, because often the parents are influencers that we forget about. And parents often look at the ag industry jobs as not professional, or we have this, it's like, if you're not going to college, you're not going somewhere. Well, that isn't the position we need to tell people that we're a professional industry, and you're going to be valued if you come to this industry. And it's not the industry that your parents know. These industries have changed. All of ag used to be cows and plows. Now it's, $1 million combines and things like that. So it's way different than it was when they were younger. And that's the hard part we need to get over. So we need to start early with these students. And I know it means time investing, and the harvest isn't for years to come. But if we don't start on those young people now, we won't get there. The other thing is a lot of secondary schools are encouraged to have career fairs, especially when students are moving from middle school to high school, just that they go around and hear about different careers on a given day. And it's making sure that we've got somebody there representing ag at all those sessions to make sure students hear about the opportunities in ag and really what is the real truth of what's going on in ag. So those are some of my recommendations, but we got a long way to go in this area. And we heard about Sara's effort, the marketing efforts that the PDA is doing as well in the same area. So thank you.
Partner.
Rick, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, Dan. I hope you can see from the results of the poll on screen. And it's pretty positive. We had 48 people who said they'd participate, which of those who responded to the poll, 84% of those responded. So But more important, it sounds like we've got 48 people who can lend a shoulder to the wheel to do this. Okay, so the next question is for Jonathan. Regarding the Butcher School, what resources or capabilities did Penn State already have in place? And what was needed to build to be effective in delivering this program?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I would probably start by acknowledging our Department of Animal Science. Our meat science facility is housed in that department, and we graciously were allowed to schedule this extension activity in that. And our manager Glenn Myers does a great job at making sure that extension, as well as our teaching activities and research, all have equal opportunity in that facility. So that was the first thing that, from an infrastructure standpoint, that worked, as well as all the staff that are here at the Meat Lab. They were paramount in the success of this year's program. Certainly couldn't and wouldn't want to do a program like this with this type of scale without them. Our other component that really played a key role was the appropriate people in various areas, and our extension educators and extension specialists. They all provided amazing support and even instruction throughout the on-campus portion of this program. I guess the biggest portion that really needed to be, quote, built as part of the program was the curriculum, and that it didn't solely fall on my shoulders, but at least initially it did, which was it was fun to do. It was a good challenge for me at the right time, and actually this is not a result of a reaction by Penn State Extension to the pandemic. This is something that was far in the works, that the pandemic actually forced us to move faster than, and sometimes in some cases faster than we intended to. We also built, which Sara is a part of with some of her colleagues at PDA, we also built an external advisory committee to help us as a sponsor to make sure that our curriculum that was developed was not something that was set in stone. It's something that is a living, what I would refer to as a living, breathing curriculum that is moldable and changeable as we grow and evolve this, to make sure we're serving the needs of our stakeholders in the industry as a whole, and also charging them with places to go after for future funding to support the program. So that had to be built, and then certainly some of the marketing that was done. I'll give all credit to Dana Olendijk because she kept us all in the loop of one of our Facebook is how we chose to market the pilot year program. And in about 5 weeks, we had over 65 applicants. We interviewed, first round interviews, 29 people, and then a second round interview with 15, because we knew we only had enough funding to put 6 people through, those individuals that you met in the video, 6 people through that pilot year. So that's really what we had and what we had to build.
So funding is still an issue, doing more for the Butcher School. So that's something we're on the lookout for. I'm going to jump ahead. One of the questions I was asked is quite brief, and I want to get the answer out. Someone asked, what's the most effective approach to partner with Penn State or any ag school to be a demo site for developing or increasing greenhouse controlled environment ag installers and technicians as a budding industry? So if you want to make some contact, you could write to me through my EA, Lori Smith, and Mary, if you can post, put her email address up. If you get to Lori, between Lori and I, will route your questions to the most appropriate people in the college or in extension more generally. Another question we were asked was, what does it take to build an on-credit credentials through the university? How many stakeholders at the table, funding sources, the number of prospective positions? What are some of the steps the college will be using to identify development opportunities and priorities that might go beyond the extension program development process? So I'm particularly concerned that we've prioritized our investments in terms of things that are central to the college's mission, where we are uniquely positioned to address the problem. We don't not funded well enough to be all things to all people or duplicate services that are provided by others. So I'm really keen to find areas where there's an important function And we're the obvious leader, and we're not just going to be competing with somebody else who can do the job as well or better. So we also consider whether it's an area where we have scholarly expertise, whether it's an area where we have strong research that we can advertise and promote in training. So we're also looking for targeted audience, and in some cases, additional funding, because we're always asked for more things to do than we can possibly deliver within our funding envelope. So we have to be a bit selective. One of the other question was, and I want to share this one with Dan, how do we encourage the next generation of workers and help them realize the benefits of non-degree training in a society that heavily pursues and requires college degrees? And Dan's already talked about this a bit with the landscaping industry, but I think he's well placed because he's doing it now. What does it take to get people to pursue these non-college degree vocations?
Well, we need to really engage much broader than a few companies. I mean, the whole industry, and this is where industry associations or whatever, and universities, everybody's going to be out there talking about why these industries are important, and these aren't the industries of yesterday. I think that's really important, and making sure these young students feel like they're going to be valued. There is a career opportunity. There are good wages. There are benefits. I mean, the good companies have to compete, so they're delivering all those. And I think that's what's really important. But it starts again way back with the high school and the pre-high school, actually even middle school, and then it's really winning over the parents in the early years, frankly. And that's the harder part of this messaging, I think, because you got to get to them. So thank you. That's a good question and not an easy answer. That we have a lot to do there. We have a whole lot to, and I think even the college, in the landscape contracting program, there are many people who have a hard time letting their child go into that as a 4-year major, because again, they tend to perceive, oh, my son or daughter is going to graduate and maybe they're going to have this little mowing business. They don't realize the biggest company in our industry is $1.5 billion. I mean, we're talking huge entities that are traded on Wall Street. And so it's a different time, and we need to make sure people are aware of that. I think the pandemic did a lot to open people's eyes to ag in general and how vital we are and how it is a worthy career to go into. But that's going to fade quickly. So we need to strike now while we can and remind people of that. I think young people are also interested in a lot of environmental stuff. And I think ag is so environmentally entwined that we need to use their awakening for the environment to show them about all of the other stuff that ag does. And so there are careers here for people that run computers, to mechanics, to harvesters. Just look at the growth of even the cannabis market. Again, different industry, still a crop, blowing it out all over the place. So lots of opportunities, lots of change, lots of innovation. So we got to show these students that this is why they ought to be here.
Yeah, so I think it's, I think what we're arguing, Deanna and I would both argue, is this is a problem. Getting more students engaged in this is something we all have to participate in. We have to talk up the job opportunities and the long-term potential, and really work collectively to get people engaged. And there were a couple of questions in the Q&A. One, has there been an increased interest in technological skills like coding and agricultural occupations? Agriculture is increasingly technological, and around the world, well, certainly at least in countries like Australia and the United States, the annual increase in productivity in agriculture is about 2%. It's higher than most other industries, and it's driven by technology. So one of the questions is, are we asking for coding? There are a lot of faculty who are interested in this already here at Penn State, who perceive that this is going to be an increasing job area for students and would like to set up training. Another question is, are there any efforts for Spanish programs? Because many are not English speakers, and we are particularly reaching out to Spanish speakers. Across the college, we're trying to facilitate workforce development everywhere we can. And Dr. Adrian Berrigan, who's participating in this webinar, has conducted on-farm training in Spanish for Hispanic mid-level managers on dairy farms. He's had 31 trainings, 248 participants, with a 26% gain and increase in their knowledge. That's just one example of the kind of outreach we're doing to Spanish speakers to get them more engaged. There's also, Paul Patterson also reports an enormous number of programs offered for poultry workforce. So there are a number of things we're doing in various areas about the agricultural side. We're running a little short on time, but one of the questions is that we received was that many urban and suburban schools have decreased attention to agriculture and environmental science. What is PSU doing to reverse that trend and expose students to agriculture and environmental sciences? I circulated this among our agricultural and extension education brain trust, and they pushed back and said they don't really agree with the premise that it's decreasing, that the largest secondary agricultural education program in Pennsylvania is at the W.B. Saul High School in Philadelphia with more than 500 students and more than 10 agri-science teachers, and especially through their Center for Professional Development. Our group, which is small, but includes Daniel Foster, John Ewing, and Kevin Curry in the ag and extension education majors. They're really trying to prepare educators in agriculture and also help with their in-service training to keep up not only with keeping up with change in curriculum, but also with skill sets in doing the training. And we also want to point out that the decision to begin and support an agri-science program and an FAA chapter, for example, is one made at the local level. Communities and school districts need to drive this action, and collectively the team Ag Ed group can help do this or continue to help provide training and in service. So there are a lot of things we can do to try to help and are doing already and look for more. Dan, I see you're up.
Yeah, and maybe Sara could quickly answer this question. I think that maybe the question had to do with, we saw a number of ag programs in high schools got defunded during the Great Recession in 2009. And then when those school districts wanted to bring back those programs, PDA did not approve it because the program wasn't part of the high priority occupation list. Sara, can you clarify, is that really the value of the high priority occupation list? Or does the Department of Education not use that list anymore to look at vocational programs?
The Department of Education now relies more on what is called PA Idle. So that's the in-demand occupation list. There is a link to that on LNI's website, which I can get and share with everyone as well.
So we're just about out of time, but one of the last questions that was in the Q&A was, what about management of people? Good in the field managers of people are very hard to find. And that's absolutely true. And it's something we're trying to do both, I think, through extension and through our on-campus education is help try to improve that. But yeah, and another great way to develop great managers is to have them work with somebody who is a great manager, like Dan Eichenlaub. A rising tide lifts all ships, right, Dan? So I want to thank everybody for all of our speakers today, Sara, Dan, and Jonathan. I want to thank the more than 100 people who tuned in today. And we'll be coming back at you about the idea of getting a program going on workforce development. Since there was enthusiasm by 48 people said they were at least likely or very likely to join such an event, Dan. So with that, thank you very much. We look forward to having you join us again on July 21st, which for our next session, which will be on the spotted lanternfly. And so I look forward to seeing you again at that time. All right, thanks a lot.